everybody. Welcome to the Tournament Center. I'm Zac Hill here with Hall of Fame member and Your Move Games founding member Rob Dougherty. You're here playing a green-white kind of mid-range aggressive deck.
Green-white beat down.
You're going to beat him up like this. Can you tell us a little bit about that deck?
Well, green-white is a great deck to play if you like creature fighting. Because basically you're playing fantastically powerful guys for their cost, low in the curve, and you got some great combat tricks, giant monsters that you can play at instant speed. So you just have a lot of big men, a lot of combat tricks. You're the best deck if your opponent's trying to get down and dirty and fight with creatures. So,
hey man, I like to fight with creatures. Let's take a look at some of the creatures that are actually in the deck. We've got them up on the wall here. Now, a little bit different from a lot of other builds. You have multiple one-drops of different colors. You've got Experiment 1 and Soldier the Pantheon, and then, of course, the staples, Fleecemane Lion and Voice of Resurgence.
So we were talking about those amazing cards for their cost. So if you look at Experiment 1, this is probably the best one-drop ever printed. So he's a 1/1 for 1, but immediately on turn 2, you're playing a guy who's bigger than him, so he gets a +1/+1 counter, so you're getting that 2/2 for 1, which would be fantastic if it stopped there, but it doesn't stop there, because you just keep playing bigger and bigger guys. He gets more and more counters. You can remove counters to regenerate him, so he survives from Wrath of God style effects, so he's just a fantastic monster. And then Soldier the Pantheon is a classic Savannah Lion style 2/1 for 1, but he's got great special abilities. So he's got protection from multicolor, so there's a lot of multicolor cards in this format. Even the monocolor decks are running multicolor cards.
Cards like Burning Tree Emissary, Boros Reckoner.
Exactly, and this guy can block those guys all day long. He's protection, can't be hurt by them. So if they've got multicolored removal, multicolored creatures, he's doing great for you there. Plus, he's gaining you life as they cast those things. And if they don't have any of that, well, he's a 2/1 for 1 mana, so you're getting in there and smashing.
Cool. Now, this Lion, you know, we know a lot about Voice of Resurgence already. We've seen it in action. Fleecemane Lion, a lot of people weren't very excited about it when the set came out.
Which is crazy, because he's he's a 3/3 for 3, and you cannot underestimate that monstrous ability. I mean, brings him up to a 4/4, which is a really solid size, but that indestructibility is huge. That, you know, he's again surviving from any kinds of creature sweepers. He can hold off bigger guys all day long. He's just, you know, he's a monster at 3. He can really give your monster 3/3 for 2 mana, and he can give your opponent real headaches.
Cool. All right, so those are a lot of the less expensive threats, the cards you play in the early game, but it doesn't really stop there, like you were saying. This is kind of a populate package. The playtest name was Propagate. A lot of people are bringing these kinds of cards in out of their sideboard, except obviously for Advent of the Wurm. You're choosing to main deck them. Why is that?
Well, green-white did kind of had a surge last week, which made it a little more of a questionable choice for the event, because it's going to be in more people's test pools, and people pay more attention
react to it. They'll metagame against it.
So I wanted to make sure I was prepared for the mirror, which was going to come up. So we had the main deck, Trostani as a 2/of, and a package of tokens, so that we can make sure that the Trostani is actually doing her thing. Because if Trostani gets going, then if you're in like a mirror match, like they're never going to be able to catch up. So and of course, if you're playing against like mono red or something, that card hits and the tears start.
And then of course, I guess Rootborn Defenses not only gives you one of these tokens, but can protect you against Supreme Verdict.
And it's the ultimate combat trick. Like if if you're in a big creature fight with all your guys versus all their guys, making your guys indestructible, getting another guy on top of it, that's wonderful. And again, versus the destroy all creatures effect, you've got the ability to play an Advent Wurm at the end of their turn. You've got the Rootborn Defenses, so you can make your guys indestructible in response. So you've got a lot of game versus versus that style effect.
Totally, and I guess I mean a 3/3 for 2, a 5/5 for 4 at instant speed, not too bad just by themselves.
Exactly, they're great beasts. They go well with your populate package, and you've got a lot of tricks with between the Advent and the Rootborn Defenses. You've got a lot of tricks to pull out.
Cool. Okay, so that's a populate package. There's still a little bit more in the main deck. We see Selesnya Charm, which can also give you a token.
Yeah.
But I want you to talk about Boon Satyr. This is a card that's not really intuitive to people why it's as awesome as it is.
Yeah, well, and I was among them. Like
okay.
when the set first came out, yeah, Boon Satyr looked okay.
Yeah.
And then we had it in some of our playtest decks, and wow, it's just fabulous because it's so flexible.
Okay.
Like it's a little surprising that we've got this 4/2 in a deck where we could be playing a 4/4 at the same cost.
Right.
But the fact that this is flash, so you can again, it's one more thing you can play at the end of the turn. So if you're playing against control, we've got 4 4-power Boon Satyrs and 4 5-power Wurms that you can throw out there at the end of their turn. So you're just giving them fits on how to protect themselves against you, and that bestow ability is really good. The fact that you can just throw it out there as as a combat trick as well. So just the Boon Satyr is just incredibly flexible card and really fun to play.
Cool. And finally, you're rounding it out, I guess, with 2 Ajani and 1 Scavenging Ooze. Are those just kind of sideboard cards that made the main deck, or are they doing something specific?
They're just really good cards. But they're both really good cards that aren't necessarily good in large numbers.
Gotcha.
Ajani is a great planeswalker for bashing with because he gives that whole double strike flying thing, and just really he just has a really powerful kill them effect. His growth ability is okay, just throwing in +1 counters, so he's not amazing versus control, but he's great versus he's a great fighting card and a great evasion card for a deck that's short on evasion.
Gotcha.
But he's a planeswalker, so you can't have multiple out. He's kind of he's a special trick that you want to throw down, so he just works well in small numbers. And so he deserves main deck attention, whether you want to play 1, 2, 3.
Sure.
But I settled on 2 because he's something that I want to draw frequently because of the power of his effect, but I didn't want to get stuck with a bunch of them in my hand.
Gotcha.
He basically needs creatures to play with.
Sure. And then 1 Scavenging Ooze.
All right, Scavenging Ooze is just an incredibly powerful card. So you get a 2/2 for 2. You pull creatures out of the discard pile. You're gaining life. So 1, if anybody happens to be playing graveyard-based effects, he can mess with them. 2, in the mid game, he just gains you a bunch of life and becomes a giant monster. Right. So he's really, really good. But again, not so good in multiples because your second ooze goes hungry because your first ooze ate everything. So this is a card where the first one gives you the biggest boost. Sure. So one of him lives in the main deck, and he's good against everybody. You're playing against a creature beatdown deck, you eat their creatures, you eat yours. If you're playing against control, after they've blown up your board, you drop him down, he eats the graveyard, and okay, now I got a giant threat on the table.
Totally.
So
But
he's good versus everybody.
Right, but don't want the diminishing returns. Okay, so we look at the lands. This is how you cast your spells. Reasonably straightforward, I think. I actually want to take a look at the sideboard right here, because your sideboard's pretty awesome. Looks like this is kind of your anti-aggro package.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, indeed. And it's you already have a pretty good game 1 versus the aggro with the way the main deck is built, and this package really pushes it over the top.
Cool.
You've got the Unflinching Courages, which obviously powerful enchantment, and that life gain. So if you're going against like a mono red deck or whatever, you can drop that down on one of your already solid beefy creatures, and you just gain so much life on every swing. It's really hard for them to come back from one of those dropped on a guy.
Totally. So that's kind of your anti-aggro package.
Yep.
We've got some more miscellaneous cards in the sideboard, though. Yep. We've got kind of your answers. We see 3 Glares of Heresy, a Hunt the Hunter, Pithing Needle, and a Sundering Growth. These are kind of your typical sideboard cards. Sure. But then Celestial Flare and God's Willing. You have 1 God's Willing in the 75. What's that guy doing there?
Well, I'm actually a big fan of powerful one-offs.
Oh yeah.
Because
tell us about it.
Well, basically, it keeps your opponents guessing. Like people will be talking about the deck that you're playing, and they'll be like, "Oh, watch out, he's got God's Willing after boarding, or he's got God's Willing in his deck."
Right.
And so. If the card is quality, it's a good card that you want to play with, but you've got so many choices of good cards, sometimes having ones of several can be a great answer, because either they play around it and then they're playing around a one of in your deck, which is a good chance you don't have, or they're not playing around it, in which case when you do play it, it's got that, the full effect.
And it makes for a great story.
And it makes for a great story. And you can keep your opponents guessing. Like when you're playing on the professional level, a lot of times people are going over all the possibilities. Okay, what can he have in this scenario? Especially if you're in a thing where people know your deck list, they start thinking about the possible options. And by having powerful one-ofs like that, it just makes their math that much harder.
Awesome. Okay, well, that's some Hall of Fame advice from Rob Dougherty. I'm Zac Hill here at the Tournament Center. Let's head back to the desk.